Hey everybody, welcome back to another 10-minute Marvel video. I'm Petter, and today we're going to be talking about your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man again. I teased this video when I put out my Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man finale video that I was going to do one about how I think Season 2 is going to go. We're getting a Season 2 and a Season 3 because I think we have a number of potential spots for storylines to go. And there's obviously, we're going to have spoilers in this, so if you haven't watched the show, I really do recommend you check it out. I enjoyed the show a ton. So, if you're still here, spoilers. Let's talk. I just want to quickly lay out the different elements of this story that we were left with here. First off, we have Lonnie Lincoln, Tombstone, starting to get a little bit more of that Tombstone look. After he crushes the brick, you can see it on his hands, that paler color. He ditches his Letterman jacket and seems to be clearly involved with the 110th, but is also going to be part of a group who works for Webb. At least internship or option there for him. So I think there's going to have to be continued storyline for him, and I wonder with his story, are they going to try and do any sort of redemption? Redemption wouldn't make sense in terms of the comic book character, but right now they've been playing him kind of as this morally gray character. I mean, they've been doing that with a lot of the characters, with the exception of like Doc Ock or Scorpion. But do they continue to toe that line? Does he try and continue to live in both the worlds? And I suspect we're going to see him try and do that. But then the character who we didn't see in Season 1 that was rumored, expected actually, to be in Season 1 with Vincent D'Onofrio and Kingpin, I wonder if that's going to be the new thing. The Scorpions have been beaten, Big Don has left, Lonnie is the head of the 110th, and Kingpin is now going to try and step into that turf. I could definitely see that being the case, and pressuring and trying to use Lonnie to maybe get some stuff out of Webb. So let's talk about Webb as well, because this is Harry Osborn's business that he's created for young geniuses, who's going to have like Asha, Peter, Jean Falco, Lonnie, and there were other names on there as well. Not Amadeus Cho. He seemed very comfortable at Oscorp. But we have this business, and I think we have to talk about it with kind of this combination of Webb and Oscorp. Because Oscorp obviously is kind of struggling and stumbling at this point, based off of their successful failure. It was a successful experiment that very much turned into a failure at the end of Season 1. And now Norman is going to have to try and rebuild everything. Like, he's a man with a lot of money and not necessarily a genius. Like, he talked about how Doc Ock wanted to take all the credit for everything. Well, that's because Doc Ock was probably doing everything. It was Norman who bankrolled it. So what does that mean for the next season, though? First off, I think we're going to start to see a push for more and greater experimentation. We have Doc Connors. We have Rhino. The person who will become Rhino has shown up in this series, and I think we're going to start to see some of that experimentation, potentially giving us Amadeus Cho as his Hulk, giving us Lizard, Doc Connors, giving us both Rhino and Chameleon, probably bringing back Scorpion, maybe forming kind of that Sinister Six. And obviously, Lizard would probably be like a fringe character on that. That when Lizard gets created, that might be the moment where everything comes out into the open, but it's too late. And on Cho, I think that he's just going to use Oscorp as long as he can. And eventually, like I said, I think it'll change him. Might not be this season, might be the following season, or it might be season 3, where we get that. But I think a lot of season 2 is going to kind of be this idea of an arms race. It's something that I don't think Harry and Nico and Peter, kind of with the idea of Webb, are really looking to go into that arms race. But Norman's going to look at it as an arms race in multiple different ways. One, he wants to beat out his son. He's probably going to be annoyed that his son has taken all the youngest, brightest minds. But also with that, Norman is having to deal with the fact that things have gone wrong. What does that do to his U.S. government contracts? Is it going to do anything? Or is it just going to stay the same? Either way, I think he's going to feel like he has something to prove and that he deserves it after being wrong about it. Plus, we have the Venom symbiote. We have the symbiote, the piece of the symbiote that came through at the very last second. Nobody realized was there. And Norman has found. What is he going to do with that? Is he going to experiment with that? Are we going to get an Eddie Brock character to become a Venom? Or are we going to get the Venom symbiote bonding with Norman and maybe feeding off of and drawing out Norman's darker tendencies? I think that would be an interesting twist, to have the mentor of Peter Parker, in some ways the person who has given him the opportunity in this timeline to become a Venom character. That could be pretty unique, I think, in terms of a story, and I would like to see that. Then there's a couple other things that we need to talk about too, with, well, a tease that they've already given for season 2, and then Nico and Peter's father. So, first off, there's Peter's father who's in prison. Obviously, you don't show that at the end of the season to be like, okay, we're just going to let that sit. That story is going to continue. And on the break room, News Rockstar's break room, they had the opportunity to interview Jeff Trammell. And he was saying that, yeah, obviously, if we are doing this, it's going to be part of the story. But also that Peter knows that his father is in prison. So this isn't something that is foreign to him. Why? So the question then is, like, why is his father in prison? And the fact he knows he's in prison probably means it's not like an undercover thing. He's not like sometimes in the comics or storylines, they've been like kind of these mysterious secret agents, Peter's parents. It doesn't seem like that would be the case. So then what's going to be that story? I think that's one story where I really don't understand. Not understand. I don't have an idea right now as to where they're going with that one. Is he going to break out of prison at some point in time? Maybe he is in the same prison as Doc Ock, and together they create kind of Doc Ock's vision. That'd be an interesting thing to make Peter's father evil. But I mean, that's kind of a question. And I did cover, just mention there, Doc Ock. We see him kind of drawing out his octopus arms, and it's actually 8 arms, not 4. So he would have 12 limbs if he goes through with that design, but I suspect it will be maybe a little bit more traditional in terms of what it looks like in the end. I expect he'll break out of jail, and he'll break out of jail, and he knows that it's Norman. He knows that Norman is the one who's messed him over, and so he's going to want revenge. But then, saved kind of one of the more interesting ones for last, and I guess I should mention too, should have maybe mentioned this with Webb, but Jean Falco is obviously a spy for Daredevil. Finesse. That was a cool reveal of all these potential different characters who have powers, to reveal that she is one of them who already has that superhero identity. So what are she and Daredevil going to keep looking into? Obviously, she's going to go work at Webb to keep an eye on Harry. But then we have Nico. Like I said, saving Nico for last here, because she casts a spell to commune with her mother. Now, if you're familiar with the Runaways comic, and I'll do a video on that whole comic coming up here soon, since I just read the compendium, a collection of that original story. But her parents were bad guys. She found out that they were evil, and through events, they were defeated, but that kind of left her on her own. Obviously, in this scenario, her parents are dead, or at least her mother is, it seems like. So, if she's communing with her mother, what is she doing that for? Is she doing that to gain a better understanding and grasp on her powers? Because we see her use her powers a couple times, at least once in the series. But for her story, she now knows that Peter is Spider-Man. And that was a big thing where she felt like her trust was betrayed. And she even talked about trust. But now she is keeping a secret from Peter. So what is that going to mean? And how is that going to spill out in the wrong way? Because I think that has to be an element to this next season as well, of her having to use her powers and it not working as expected. Now, it'd be interesting to know if the Runaway storyline has happened in the past, then she's at least somewhat familiar with her powers and the fact that she can't duplicate a spell that she's already cast, or at least one from the Staff of One. Like, that is you can cast something once. A bunch of pelicans appear one time when she tries to cast something again. So, how familiar is she with her powers? Because if she's not super familiar with them and she tries to cast something again, that chaos, that randomness from her trying to cast something again could kind of be that revealing moment for her character, and put her character in kind of that moment of weakness where she's having to rely on somebody else to clean up her mess. So, I've talked about all these different things, all these different characters. How does this come together into a single story? And obviously, we saw there were elements of it that were fairly separate from this. Peter has not met Doc Ock at this point in time, for example. And I think there's a couple ways that this could go. But I think we're going to introduce Kingpin. For me, he's probably one of the big pieces that can pull this whole thing together. Kingpin comes to town, and he's not trying to take over turf the same way that the Scorpion Gang did. He is trying to integrate what's already there into his criminal enterprise. And he has in terms of a villain, has very strong ideas of what people are allowed to do. If something is bad for his business, for him making money in the long run, he's not going to be that interested in it. Even if there's a quick, large influx, he's truly a businessman with a vision for the future. It's just that vision is crime. So he's going to start working with the criminal enterprises in here. And he, I think, is going to be not only kind of working on the street level with Lonnie, but also maybe propping back up Oscorp, where through his shady stuff, he's funneling money into Oscorp, but to get back out of it, he gets something, and he wants kind of what Norman wants. So it's going to be this, yes, you're taking advantage of me in some ways, but we're both getting something that we want. We get to experiment on creating powers and creating enhanced individuals. So I think that then starts to tie together. But the one area that Kingpin isn't able to get into, one area that has some maybe interesting technology, interesting things coming out of it, is going to be Webb. And that's going to frustrate him, so he's going to try and take down Webb. And Osborn is going to be moving a little bit too slow for him. So he'll look to bring in help. And bringing in help, I think, could very easily be bringing in Peter's father, as well as Doc Ock, and bringing them into kind of this shadier area of Oscorp, so that while Oscorp is trying to rebuild its name and everything, they're really, like I was saying, working for Kingpin. What does this then have to do with Nico? I think that Nico's idea, her storyline is going to be a little bit more separated. It's going to be more tightly tied to Peter and her friendship with Peter, and that reveal eventually of when she has powers, what does that do to Peter? Does he look at it as like, okay, a chance excuse me, a chance to team up, or does he look at it as a betrayal, much like she looked at it as a betrayal? And I think for her, the bigger betrayal wasn't so much that Peter hadn't told her that he was Spider-Man, but that Harry knew. And so in her mind it might be a little bit different, but will it be that case with Peter, and how is he going to struggle through that? And then, saving the best for last here, there's going to be more Spider Folks, because we've seen an asset for season 2 of Spider-Gwen. So first off, I'm assuming that's why they show the spider. They show the spider climb into a backpack in episode 1 and somebody pick up that backpack and leave. That's probably Gwen Stacy. So if that's her backpack, she at some later point in time gets powers as well. Now, what is that going to do? And I think again this falls into that Nico, Peter, Harry, more like friend related range, because when Spider-Gwen shows up, Peter's gonna be like, wait, there's another spider person out there? I have to meet this person. I have to find this person because it's so awesome and they're like me. And that's going to feel like when that reveal of Nico happens, it's going to be like, well, you are like me too. Granted, you do different things, but why? Like, we could have been doing this together, or this could be a part of our life, friendship. Why were you not there for that? And so I think we're going to see Spider-Gwen, Gwen Stacy, show up on that more personal level, and she might even show up at the school. Because will they all be back to that main central school at this point? Or are they still going to be at this other school with Pearl? Because if they move back to this other school, Pearl now becomes a character that Peter only interacts with outside of school in his real life, potentially. And I think that's going to be an interesting element in question to it as well. I think they're going to stay at the school that they are at. Just based off of the interview stuff with Jeff Trammell, it seems like they want to, and they've said, he was saying, it's kind of a question of what does this look like for Peter if he's now at a different school and he doesn't have MJ and he doesn't have Ned. Who are these new people that he surrounds himself with? And I like how they did that, and I'm glad that they used that as a breaking off point from everything. But what do you think is going to happen in season 2? Obviously, I didn't really delve into what could happen in season 3, and maybe season 2 is kind of that Kingpin arc, and then season 3 is going to be Norman pulling together all these villains that the Kingpin has created to potentially go to war with Kingpin, but also kind of forming that Sinister Six story that we haven't had in ages, as much as Sony tries to somehow make it work. Sony, please, for the love of God, stop. Well, they have currently. Just give everything back to Marvel, please, please, please. I know you won't, but please, please, please. And yeah, it'd be interesting to see Marvel beat Sony to the punch of a Sinister Six. Even in the animated form, that would be something. But to me, that feels like season 3. Season 2 is creating kind of this group, this team around Peter more so, and what happens when a new street level villain shows up. Who cares about controlling all the streets? Does Peter have to team up with Daredevil? Does he find out who Jean is? Questions like that I think we could get answered in season 2. But let me know your thoughts on this theory and kind of the ideas that I have for the different end elements of the show and where I think it could go down to the comment section below. If you enjoyed this content, please give the video a thumbs up, and we'll be talking about this more on next week's episode of 10 Minute Marvel Podcast, where we're going to be talking about the finale. You can find the podcast here on YouTube. Click onto the channel. Subscribe if you haven't already. We appreciate everybody who has subscribed and is checking out the videos. And then click on the podcast tab. Or you can search for 10 Minute Marvel wherever you get your friendly neighborhood podcast from. But with that, we'll see you next time.